Welcome to the Midweek Table. This is our Carbondale podcast where we take Sunday's message and talk about how it actually fits in real life. Each week, we sit down with a pastor who spoke on Sunday to hear what stood out, what got left out, and how we can live it out. So pull up a seat to the table and let's dive in.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Midweek Table. We're really glad that you're here joining us today. If you are watching online, you have already noticed that I am not sitting with my regular crew here. We have some very special guests with us from some pastors and missionaries that are here from us a long way away. This sitting next to me is Randy Freeman and his wife Dezra. And there's actually a really cool story of how I met you guys. It was a little over a year ago. And the story is that I was heading to Mozambique. There's some missionaries that we had recently here at Carbondale to go see in Mozambique. And I got my map out and my missionary support list, and I realized that Carbondale had missionaries in Durban, South Africa. Who knew? Where is Durban, South Africa? So I figured it out, and you guys were a wonderful host and got to go be with you in your church in Durban. And so this week at Carbondale is our Send Conference, and so throughout the whole week, we've got 12 different missionary singles and families that are with us here at Carbondale, celebrating the Great Commission, celebrating our ability to be a part of that. And that's what Sunday was about here at the church. And so we decided here on Midweek Table to do something a little bit different and to invite one of these missionary families to hang out with us and let us get to know you and all those kinds of things. So you got to kick us off with just like the beginning introductions. Who are you? How did you get here?
So my name's Randy. This is my wife, Dezra. And as you mentioned, we serve in Durban, South Africa.
A crazy story. Me and Mandy had our 20th anniversaries this year, and so we did some traveling, and we met a couple who grew up in Durban, South Africa. It was wild. So we were actually in like the Mediterranean area.
Oh my goodness.
And it was just so random because they told us, they're like, well, we're from South Africa. Oh, we're in South Africa, which I mean, I can just name about 3 cities. So Joburg, Cape Town, and Durban. That's where my limit's at. And they named one of the 3 I knew where it was at.
Hallelujah.
But they were also just very surprised. And they also talked about Bunny
chow.
Yeah.
Okay, you have to explain what this is because it's not in America.
Yeah, so bunny chow. So we have a large Indian population in Durban, and bunny chow, the way that it came about, was when the Indians immigrated to South Africa to work in the sugarcane fields. They needed to take their lunch to work, and how are you going to take curry to work in the field? So one day somebody just like took a loaf of bread, kind of broke it in half, scooped out the middle, and they put the curry in the middle. And these guys would take their kind of half loaf of bread full of curry out to the field, and that was how they ate their lunch. Thus, bunny chow.
And you guys took me to a restaurant.
We did.
It was not in a field.
No.
It was very nice. It was very nice, but nevertheless, it was essentially half a loaf of white bread.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tasty.
Okay, talk about you guys have not been in missions your entire life. Talk about that transition, what you were doing before, and how that came from being involved in ministry in the States to somewhere that is very, very far away.
Yeah. Des, you want to take that?
We were pastoring. We had started a church in the North Texas area, and we wanted to be involved in missions, obviously, and so we started doing missions trips. And the first trip he took was to Tanzania, and he came home and didn't seem that affected by it. But then the second time he went to Swaziland. And when he got in the car, there was just this look in his eyes, and I was like, oh no, because that was not on the list of things to do. And I didn't say anything. I definitely held that one in my heart. And we had just started the church. I mean, we were like 3 or 4 years old at that point, and our kids were little, and I thought, well, when the kids get big, maybe missions. But I don't know, 7 years into the church plant, we felt like we were supposed to leave, and missions seemed like where we were supposed to go, and to Swaziland. So that's the short version, my version.
That's really interesting. Well, it's funny because, we have kids. Your kids are a little older than our kids. But we've definitely been in the season in marriage where most of our traveling is done separately.
Yeah.
And even with missions trips and things that Mandy has led teams to go, well, it's either her or me because of the needs of the kids and because of all that kind of stuff. And you just hit something there that I'm really interested by, Dezra, as that experience when God speaks to one person in a marriage first, or one person has an experience first. What was that like for you?
Well, I think because I didn't really want it to be true,
Yeah.
it was easy to not bring that up, if that makes any sense. Because you could see it in his eyes, and I don't even know if he knew it at that point. It may have been more gradual for him. And again, it was one of those things I thought, maybe it was just me, but I immediately, I'm going to tuck that away in my heart and just let that play out. And it was years,
And then talk about the location. How did you end up in Durban?
Yeah, so we, as Dezra mentioned, we went to Swaziland first, which is a tiny little country, almost completely surrounded by South Africa. And we were serving there, doing a missionary term there. And some friends who were also serving there said, "Hey, let's get out of context. Let's go do like a weekend away. Let's go to this little city called Durban." And we'd never really heard of Durban up until that point, or maybe had, but didn't know a lot about it. But we knew there was a beach there. They told us there was a beach. So we went down with them, drove 6 hours south from where we were in Swaziland to just go visit the beach. And when we were sort of driving into the city. It was just beautiful. You're kind of driving through the sugarcane fields. You come over a hill and you see this, just really beautiful city. And I remember, just on that drive, because we had been church planters, as Dezra mentioned, in the Dallas area, and loved the city and and so just kind of driving in, I just kind of flippantly said, "Hey, somebody needs to plant an amazing church in this city," because we had been in Swaziland for probably about a year and a half at that point, and which is a very small country, rural country. And so at that point, I think I was just happy to see life, see a city. And so I was like, somebody needs to plant a church in the city, almost joking. But as we were there over the weekend, just kind of being there and seeing people and seeing the diversity of the city, it sort of started stirring stuff in us. But again, we didn't think that was even a possibility at that point. We just kind of, again, tucked that away in our heart. And a few years later, as things I ended up going there and teaching a church planting boot camp for pastors in that region, and doing a whole survey with them of the area and looking to where there weren't churches and talking to them about why they weren't planting churches. And God was all the while just kind of stirring this stuff up, and I didn't have any idea. And then about a year after that, the dream for Urban Tribes started to develop. And as we were asked to lead Urban Tribes and start Urban Tribes, they gave us the opportunity. They said, "Hey, you need to kind of have a model church, sort of an incubator for where we're going to plant the rest of these. Where would you guys like to plant a church?" And by then, we'd gone to Durban a few times and kind of fallen in love with the culture and the people and the diversity. And so that for us, it was kind of a no-brainer.
But I do want to back up. We had not heard of Durban. But then in retrospect, we figured out our first church when we planted, we went to district council, and the superintendent got up and was like, "We're going to open churches in this particular city. Who wants to give $2,000 to start a church?" And Randy, when we had 12 people in our church, and Randy stood up, and you may have even said, "We'll do 2." I don't remember. And I was like, "What?" But in retrospect, we figured out the place was Durban.
Yeah.
Is where they were planting churches.
That's where our first plant church gave its first missions offering to Durban.
Yeah.
But we didn't know that at the time.
So I just want to, for our listeners, to try and paint a picture of the experience of walking into your church on a Sunday morning is, some of the work that our church did in Mozambique last year, about an hour outside of the capital city of Maputo, would be the things that most Americans would imagine about what missions in Africa looks like.
Right.
So you're out at a place where there is no electricity and there is no running water, and the tabernacle that you're building really is a metal frame, almost shed kind of a thing that can be filled in and look nicer. But you've got people that are cooking for you over a fire that they are tending, that they have made. You have people that are very, very poor, people that are, and also singularly ethnic people that are from one tribe, from one language. The language of Mozambique, the trading language is Portuguese. But so many of those churches are not occurring in Portuguese. They're occurring in Shangana or in other tribal languages. And so you've got a group of people where if you were the white person, you were the only white person within 20 miles of that location. that's there walking into your church on a Sunday morning was an anti-culture shock because, well, first of all, even getting there, that down the street from your church, there was like I'm saying the word wrong, the car dealership, AUDI, Aldi. Dealer that was like, there was just some beautiful things and there was some great wealth in there amidst some really challenging spaces, and so the contrast was huge. But you walk into your facility, which is just gorgeous. You have a wonderfully designed, kind of looks like a coffee house that anyone would want to go to in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then the people are just so diverse that you've got people that look black and white and Indian and just a wonderfully diverse congregation. And then your tech stuff, I'm just bragging on you. Your tech stuff is fantastic. And like the sound and audio and the worship, Dezra is a worship leader and has amazing voice, great leadership. And it's like your team is kicking. And it was just so fantastic, but like surprising to see. Not what a normal American would expect to see in Africa. So will you talk about what Urban Tribes is and how the vision for a different missiological approach to Africa started?
Yeah, so Africa is the fastest urbanizing region of the world. Most people don't understand that, which means, our cities are just exploding and growing. But then also globalization, we've all witnessed globalization is just reshaping the world, and that is happening a lot in
Can you
Africa.
explain what you mean with globalization?
Yeah, the world is just, you take technology, you take multinational companies, you take the way that we interact and do business with one another all over the world. People are just influenced by the world all at one time in one space. And so you take, people will call in sometimes to a call center, Verizon or a company like that, and they think, they hear an Indian accent and they think, I'm talking to someone in India. They're probably talking to someone in Durban, South Africa. And it's just because of globalization. So Verizon has contracts with a call center that's probably based out of Europe but has a contract in Durban, and you have Indians who are sixth generation from India now living in Durban. So you have all these just amalgamation of cultures in cities all over the world. Tulsa would be a micro example of that. I mean, here you are in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There's all kinds of diversity in this city. And so places like Durban, South Africa, Cape Town, Kinshasa, I could go on and on and on. The world literally comes to these places to do business. So the people who live there, grow up there, they're experiencing the multiculturalism of their city, but then they're also, because of media and technology, they're consuming, people in Southern Africa are consuming media not just from America, they're consuming media from the UK, they're consuming media from Asia, they're consuming media from Australia. Probably some of the biggest fashion influences in a city like Durban would be Australia, just because of being a beach city. So just all of that together creates what we would call sort of a third culture that emerges in a city, where when this diversity starts to come together, a new language, a new art, a new sort of artistic voice, a new kind of music is birthed. Music in South Africa is very fascinating. It's an example of just this amalgamation of culture. So globalization is really when the world comes to a city, and that city starts to sort of internalize what's happening around the world and finds its own voice, its own expression, its own way of doing business, its own sense of ethic. All of that starts to happen. So that's happening in Africa in an incredible way. And so as a mission, we're just like, okay, well, what does it look like if we plant churches that give space for this third urban culture to emerge and express itself, to do theology out of the city, to do the kingdom out of the city? What does that look like? And then how do we hold space for that as a mission? How do we hold space for that to happen, for a new generation of believers to emerge who is expressing their spirituality through all of these different filters?
It was so fascinating to me is about the ministry of your church is that everything's in English.
Yeah.
And as the central language in South Africa. And if you decided to, in Durban, offer a church that was in a tribal language or that was in an Indian language, you would immediately break up your church.
Yep.
Because everyone would have to go back to their culture group that they came from.
Yeah.
And so, there's strain in moving it forward and getting out of those spaces. but yet there's wonderful blessings. It's the only way to get to a multicultural space is to create something new.
Yeah.
And that's where even like the songs that you were leading, Dezra, it's like, well, I recognized most all of the songs that you were doing, but then looking at the diversity of your team, I knew I wasn't in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But I knew that's like, well, this is absolutely incredible. This is so good. I recognize all of these things. And so it's like, you would misread it if you would say that you guys have Americanized culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're not paying attention or looking far enough to realize it's not American, it's global.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that,
Thank you for recognizing that.
well, no, well, and it's funny because like my wife Mandy, who grew up in Thailand as a missionary kid, in that era, well, most Thai culture with American things hung like 20 or 30 years behind.
Yeah.
So like Elvis was super popular when she was a kid, and just those artists, because there was this lag, a culture lag.
Yeah.
And that culture lag just doesn't exist anymore.
That's exactly right.
Because it's all just so immediate. Can you talk about leading worship in Durban, and what is that like, working with a wonderfully diverse team who comes back from all these different, what is that like?
You know what? It is a challenge for me leading cross-culturally, because sometimes, I mean, and you've been a worship leader, I can remember when I led worship in the U.S. and something would be off, and you'd make the statement, "We need more cowbell." And I don't know if you remember that from Saturday Night Live. And I made the mistake one day of saying, "We need more cowbell." And first of all, they're all too young, and secondly, they have no idea what I'm talking about. And it's just little things like that. I said something the other day. I said, "Play me a little ditty," and they were like, "What are you talking about?" So leading cross culturally is interesting, but the beautiful thing about South Africa is they leave so much space for, well, that your culture's like that. Ha, that's funny, and they kind of give room to kind of harass each other about it in a happy way. And the team is working hard to work together, and I can see that. And because it isn't normal for them. A lot of them have not played or sang with people of another race before.
When you're even working with instrumentation that may not be the same instruments that they used growing up.
Yeah, it is definitely it's different, but their attitudes have been great, and it's been a lot of fun.
It was actually your kids, who are awesome, who warned me the night before we went to church. They said, we need you to know that the cuss words in South Africa are swapped out, and that there are a few words in America that aren't that bad, but are cuss words here, and a few words that are cuss words in America that aren't a big deal to us.
Yes.
And
Do you want us to bring them in? And
no, I don't. I don't think we'll make the list. But yes, there was someone who greeted me at church and just said, "Well, isn't the devil just kicking?" And I was like, yes, we do want to beat up on the devil. That is just great. Let's do that today.
I probably know who that was.
It was nice. Yeah, it was wonderful. It was worth it.
It's fun, but I love there's so much excitement, and it's a vibe. It's a vibe.
So what God has done in your church in Durban is, as you were saying, is a case study for what is happening all across Africa. Talk to me about what that multiplication model looks like. Where are you at in that process of being able to see churches like this that are really revolutionary start to pop up in other cities in the continent? Yeah,
so with Urban Tribes, currently we have 10 projects, and that they would be at different phases in the church plant process. Everything from
that just blows my mind, Randy.
Yeah.
So, like, how long ago did Durban get planted?
February will be 8 years.
Yeah, February will be 8 years.
Okay, I just want to make sure every American listening hears what we're talking about. We're talking about a 8-year-old church that is now in process with 10 church plants in 10 different cities.
Yeah, but I want to be fair.
I know you're not doing it by yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
We couldn't do it by ourselves. And even our church in Durban, I mean, we're part of this movement called Urban Tribes. And so Urban Tribes is a ministry of Assemblies of God World Missions Africa. So it takes churches like Carbondale.
I know that you're not alone. But this is also something that could take 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, definitely.
And the speed that God is working at is really impressive.
Yeah, God has done incredible things, and just bringing the right leaders. A lot of it comes down to finding the right leader, and the people who are called to a place, and then finding partner churches who will come alongside and support that. It takes all of that.
So is the goal that most everyone who's going to be at an Urban Tribes church on the continent comes through Durban for a period of time, or are you starting to institute other language
Sure.
spaces or?
Yeah, no, they don't have to. They don't have to come through Durban. They can go through. They're straight to their country, or there's lots of different pathways. And what we're trying to do is to have strong churches in different regions on the continent. So it's kind of like a hub and a place for people to come, and people who come to work are coming at different phases, in their ministry career. So for some people, brand new missionaries, maybe brand new to ministry, maybe they need to come to a place like Durban and spend a term and, become accustomed to ministry. Whereas other people, maybe they're coming from a place where they've done cross-cultural ministry before, or they've led at a high level. Maybe they're more prepared to go directly to where they're going to serve. But yeah, I think Durban is definitely a place where we see people coming, getting developed, and getting trained. And that's one of the blessings of our facility that we have and some of the partnerships that we have with urban tribes, with like Southeastern. We're now a site for Southeastern on the continent of Africa. So we have a unique opportunity. If someone wants to come do an MA term with us, maybe they've graduated from like Nelson or one of our other schools, got a bachelor's degree, and they come do 2 years with us and earn a master's degree.
Oh, that's so cool.
And get that master's degree out of the way while they're serving the first 2 years and getting their feet wet. So we're hoping and praying through that to create a kind of a pipeline, if you will, for church planters, because that's the biggest need for us right now are church planters, leaders who have the capacity to go and plant churches. The opportunity is there. The cities are exploding, and even partner churches who want to be a part. They see urban tribes that make sense to them to say, okay, well, that's a church that, I can be a part of that. We can connect with. So, just the leaders, and then people to come be on teams. And like every one of our projects, it's a local church. So they have a kids ministry, they have a youth ministry, they have a worship ministry. So they have tech. So people called, and then most of us are also doing some business expression. So even people coming who are, maybe they're not from a church staff perspective, but they're coming from the business world. All of those opportunities are there because as urban tribes, we're there to make disciples among gatekeepers in gateway cities of Africa. So the way that we make disciples is through engagement, not just in the church, but in the marketplace, arts and entertainment, medical industry, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, the opportunities are endless.
One of the things I was so impressed with both of you is I had the opportunity to sit in on a staff meeting that you were having, which wasn't during the day, it was in the evening. And it was in the evening because you had that room just filled with, it was so many people. It was so many people. And you think about a church in America that would be of a certain size, a church of 100 or 200, and what the staff would look like for that. And you are far exceeding those numbers with the teams that you have built, which I assume are some varied combination of completely volunteer and part-time or full-time, that's all in that room together. I think I'll send the question towards you, Dezra. Would you just talk about that team building of helping someone find their ministry gifts, finding a role? Like, what are some of the things that you find have worked well to build a team like that?
I think personally, one thing that is really important is just being able to see things in people. And it hurts me actually when I tell somebody, this is what I see in you. And they're like, no one's ever said that. And I think, nobody ever said that to you, And I think that's just it's an important thing when you're trying to build a team is be able to see something in somebody and call it out. Because then they believe in themselves. They believe that God sees it in them. And for me, that's one big way. You can.
That's really good because if all that we're doing is waiting for someone to be successful and then recognize them, there's nothing unnatural about that. That's just human observation, right? So like someone wins a talent competition and we go, "Hey, you're a good singer." Well, they already did this, right? It's already done.
Yes.
But that spiritual gifting,
Yes.
to be able to see it before everyone sees it, even before that person sees it themselves. Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah, I think we would tell you that's the biggest lid that we often see with our leaders, even, or people who come on our church staff team, is they lack what Dezra's talking about. They'll go and they'll choose somebody who's already serving somewhere, and they'll pull them over, and we're like, that's not what this is about. You need to, and I think it's a prophetic gift. It's a part of the New Testament gift of prophet and prophecy is to see in people the potential and to encourage that. Dezra, from an APES perspective, that's a part of Dezra's gift mix. But I think as leaders, as church leaders, you have to be capable of that, seeing into people what their potential is, and then we're called to be disciple makers. That means that you don't get people who are fully formed. You're part of the formation process. So it's easy to have a big team when the tent is wide and the umbrella is wide, and say, okay, well, we're going to bring people under the umbrella. Maybe they're not fully formed. Maybe they can't run everything, but we want to get them in the conversation so they at least can learn the thinking that goes behind decision making. So we just try to.
Also, I want to add, you have to be open to the reality that you don't get to just have people on your team that are fun or that you like to work with or just cool. That's not how it works.
That's good.
It's just not how it works.
I'll joke with my staff and just say, the moment we get to a church where everyone that we serve is fully spiritually formed is the day that none of us work here.
Yeah.
Because if everyone at our church is 100% spiritually formed, they don't need us.
Yes.
They don't need us to preach or lead worship or organize something, because we are here for the difficult cases.
Yes.
We are here for those who are starting from zero.
Yes, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's good.
Yeah, some of our, I probably shouldn't
Yeah,
say
maybe
this.
you should say.
Some of our superstars right now, they weren't superstars 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And they weren't, like when you were having your draft picks, they weren't at the top of the list, but now they're at the top of the list. But it's because
That's so cool.
we've been walking with them for 5 years. Now they are superstars. They could go anywhere and do anything and lead at a high level, but you had to start with them where they were and love them and see potential in them, and just go through the process of discipling them and the good and the bad, and just kind of be open to that.
Okay, so I know that both of you are on kind of a short itineration time where you're here in the States for a period of weeks, trying to figure out how quickly you can get back to South Africa. What are the things that are on your prayer request list right now, either for the church there, for your family, for finances? What are the things on the list?
Sure. I think I'd like to start with our family. It's been 9 years since we've done an itineration, so this is needed for us to get to spend time with our family. Just praying for us, and we, like anybody, we have to think about retirement someday. We have to think about what is life 15 years from now for us, and so there's decisions and things that we need on a personal level that we would never just get up and say, hey, we need to think about retirement someday. But we do, and they're just practical things. 2 of our kids are back here in the States. 2 are still with us, and we'll be transitioning back to the States in the next couple years. And so what does all that look like? What does college look like for them? And so that's on a personal level. I think there's things that we just need the Lord to help us with and give us wisdom in decision making. From a ministry perspective, we got to raise our budget in a very short amount of time so that we can get back. And there's a monthly budget and a cash budget. There would be a couple of things I would think of. What would you say, Dezra?
I think you covered it.
Okay.
They say it'll get easier, but I think it just gets more complicated.
Yeah, it does.
It just gets more complicated. Remember those years when we were 21 in ministry? That was the best. Do you know how much I knew when I was 21? I was so smart. It's all been downhill. Well, friends, thanks for joining us today for Midweek Table. We're just going to close this time just with praying together, and we're going to pray over the Freemans, over the ministry here, and then just over our whole experience here at Carbondale this week. I'll post some reminders that this is posting on Wednesday, which means tonight we're doing World Food Fest at 5:30 with some great sweet and salty things. And then there'll be missionaries in each one of our services tonight for youth, adults, and for kids. And then this Sunday is the last day of Send Conference. And so we've got guests Larry and Belinda Henderson, who are the AGWM, as some of the God World Missions directors for Europe. And so it'll be cool to hear what God's doing in the continent of Europe on Sunday. So make sure you join us for that. Father, we thank you that you're here. I thank you, Lord. And I know that even just the act of faith that we express by saying our prayer needs out loud is one of the ways that we physically demonstrate our dependence on you, is that we don't need to hold on to it because we're not the solution. So we're going to say it out loud because you're the solution. And so I pray, Lord, that you would meet every need for the Freemans. I pray that the answers that they're looking for, that you would show up in your perfect timing with a perfect answer, with a God-sized answer, and bless their children as they venture into new plans and into your will for their lives, Lord. I thank you so much for this church in Durban, and I pray that as we worship here, tonight on a Wednesday night here at Carbondale, that we know that there's worship occurring all across this globe, and specifically in a coastal city in South Africa. And I pray, Lord, that there would just be a continued abundance of favor upon this church in Durban, that we would continue to see new disciples making new disciples, and that you would bless their ministry budgets and all of the things that are necessary to see that grow and multiply. Praise to your name, God. You're so good. We've seen you be so good, and so we have high faith that you're going to see us into the next season. We love you. We praise you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks for joining us again on the Midweek Table. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.